Hallo zusammen und herzlich willkommen zu meinem Podcast Die Leichtigkeit der Kunst. Ein Salon-Podcast über Kunst, Kultur und Gesellschaft. Mein Name ist Claudia Linzel und ich freue mich sehr, euch hier begrüßen zu dürfen. Diese Folge entsteht in Zusammenarbeit mit der Art Brussels, der internationalen Messe für zeitgenössische Kunst in Brüssel. Ein Ort der Begegnung, des Austauschs, des Blicks nach vorn. Und weil wir uns im internationalen Dialog bewegen, ist diese Folge mit Joost Vanhaerents auf Englisch. Dear Joost, first of all, thank you so much for welcoming me here in Belgium. As co-owner of the renowned Vanhaerents Art Collection, you are part of a family that has shaped one of the most forward-thinking private collections in contemporary art. For over 5 decades, you and your family have collected with a remarkable sense for innovation, artistic relevance and transformation. But how does such a collection come into being? What role do fairs like Art Brussels play in shaping our collector's view? And what kind of art truly opens our gaze towards what lies ahead? Dear Joost, hartelijk welkom.
Thank you, Al.
Would you like to share more about your very first encounter with art?
Yes, thank you for coming to the Vanhaerents Art Collection. But our story started very soon. At a very young age, my parents would drag myself and my sister to different art museums and galleries and exhibitions. And I was barely 10 years old at that time. And I feel a bit like Obelix, the gold from the Asterix comic strip. And he felt like a little child into the barrel of the magic potion, and he became invincible for the rest of his life. And so I was, as a child, submerged in the barrel of art. And at that time, it wasn't exactly a funny experience, because at that age you want mostly to play outside with your friends. But as we were forced to go to museums, it turned out right. And for me personally, my first encounter was the visit to the Abteiberg Museum in Mönchengladbach. And it was very important, and it sparked for the first time my interest in art. And there we were confronted the first time with the international art scene that was very imposant, because my father at the time was collecting more local Belgian artists. And I regularly make the comparison between football and art, and suppose that you have been going to a local or provincial football matches all your life, and you think, okay, that's football. And at a certain time, you have the chance to see Liverpool play Bayern Munich and the Champions League, and both are football, but they are completely from a different level. And that's the same with art. And for me personally, it was the figure of Joseph Beuys that was very important, because as a child I did not understand why an artist would place gigantic blocks of solid fat and huge amounts of felt in the entrance hall of a new built museum. And I discovered later on his story on a video that we bought in the museum shop. And I've watched the video cassette over and over again until it was completely stuck. And I discovered that Joseph Beuys was born in 1921, and he joined the Luftwaffe and became a Stuka airplane fighter pilot. And he told that in the video that he crashed his bomber in 1944 over the Krim. And he was seriously injured, and he was found by a Tartar clan who rubbed him with fat and wrapped him into felt to keep him warm. And the materials that has saved his life, he used later in his artistic career, like blood, like fat, felt, copper. And that was, for me, it was like some weird thing. And he was a gifted and passionate speaker, and on television and also in the video, always he was talking to students and discussing with people over art, and then explaining his work to students. And it's also the man with the famous quote, and it was certain in the video, that he told that jeder Mensch ist ein Künstler, and every human is an artist. And for me that's very true, because everyone has talents that make him or her very exceptional. And as a fervent supporter of the Fluxus movement, he wanted also to get rid of the elite side of art being in a museum, because that creates a sort of distance between people and art. And for me, in his opinion, art didn't belong in museums, but should be on display in people's living rooms, in parks and in squares and in a public space. And that's also my belief, that art must be accessible and form an essential part of the daily life. Only then art can become truly accessible and non-committal. And I always explain people in a museum, you can pass a work of art 1,000 times without noticing it, and the 1,001 time you will pass and you will stop and you will want to find out who created the work and what the artist wants to tell the world with the artwork. And maybe you do this on your own, or perhaps you were asked by a grandchild of a child, and you will not give the answer because you don't know the answer. And then you will take the time to look it up on the internet or find out who is the artist. And then also the meaning of the artwork will be much longer in your memory, and you will remember it. And then it's more fluent way to connect with art. And for me, the stories of the artist, that's what interests me in art. I'm always interested in what message does an artist want to send out into the world with his or her work. And the collection also here wasn't built on a day. Rome wasn't built on a day. Vanhaerents Art Collection was also certainly not built in a day. It happened very gradually. And what started as a hobby became a passion. And like all passions, it grew into something uncontrollable. We always say passion is an incurable disease, and there is no medication for it. Moreover, it's also transferable by birth. I was bitten by the art bug, and it lasts for the rest of my life. And that's the same with my children, and perhaps also with my grandchildren in the future. And I think art takes you to another world. You are free if you are walking in the art world. And where words fail, often art takes over without any explanation. And for me, I always tell art is the food of the soul. By looking at art and experiencing art, you can briefly escape from the rat race where we all live. And for me, art is like a pure form of meditation.
So I'm one of the most thankful person in the world, because I had the chance to get in touch with you. You show me your very impressive Vanhaerents Art Collection. But to all the people who are not here, who are just listening to this episode, would you like to tell me more about your collection, your family collection?
Our collection, we always tell people, we buy with our eyes and with our heart. If we wonder, it's important to do a lot of visits and to go to a lot of gallery shows and a lot of museum shows and to look at art. That's the most important. And sometimes we do that at a high speed because we look and at first glance we don't see something that where you have an interaction with, that takes your interest. But when the work takes your interest, I always say it's like falling in love. You stop, you see something and you say, that's something nice. I want to know more about it. And then you go to the gallerist and you ask who is the artist, what is the meaning of the work. And if the explanation is also something good, then you have a double match and you get interested. And then for the third step is to look, what is the history of the artist? What has he done in the past? Has he an important track record? Is he a young artist? Is he already a mid-career artist? Or is it already someone who is an older artist at the end of his career? So sometime you missed him or you didn't recognize him. But when you have a match, then I think you can buy the work. And then if the price is correct, you can buy the work, because I don't like the work investing. People say you are investing in work. Investing was never an option for us. We always bought the work because we liked it. And sometimes we didn't bought it because we didn't like the work at the time and we made other choices. Making a collection is making choices and making the things that you like. You surround yourself with things that you find beautiful or like or have a meaning for you that you think is very important. And that's the way that the Vanhaerents Art Collection has grown through the years, by sometimes being at the right spot at the right time. When the Chinese artist entered the art market, we were there when we bought Chinese artists. When the Japanese artist in 2000, 2002 came on the art market, we were there at the first row and we invested and we bought the Chinese artist. And also, like 5 years ago, art world was mainly a male white world with the come of feminine artists. But we never buy art in function as is it made by a man or by a woman or a black or a white guy or a man or a woman. We buy artworks in first time because we like them, and even the artwork is more important than the artist himself, because that's the most important thing. And so we have bought year after year the things that we like, and sometimes you fall in love with an artist, and every year that he produces work you buy new works, and so you support an artist like that, and you try to do that as long as possible until the price is so high that you cannot follow him anymore, because we don't buy artists when they are already very renewed or have high prices. We try to buy them in the start or in the beginning of their careers. And this is also, as a collector, a support of an artist.
Do you fall in love with an artist?
I fell in love with an artist in 2008, and the name was Thomas Saraceno. I liked the work. I was completely blown away by his ideas, and I bought them for a long time. I had the chance to meet him and to talk to him. And now I'm very glad for him that he made such a fantastic career. He has shown all over the world. He's very popular. He has big exhibitions, and he's completely responsible for his own success because he's so dedicated. And all the success is only the result of his efforts that he makes every day. And he's a very good artist, and I'm glad that other people also think the same thing about his work as me as a collector.
Do you have some works which are very special for him?
Well, I have a little spider box, and I'm very glad with it because he's an architect, and he sees the spiders as the architects of nature, because they start from nothing and they build like 3D sculptures. And so he learned so much about spiders that scientists visit his studio to discover what he discovered about the spiders, and also his visionary ideas, how people will live in the future when Earth is no longer livable because it will be polluted and people will move as astronauts into space. He's a very visionary artist, and he tells things that are very contemporary, because everybody is thinking about the care of nature, the care of climate change, how will we live in the future, and it's a very important topic in this world. And he's a very activated artist. He's an activist. He's against the mining of lithium. He's against the use of fossil fuels, and so he has proved that you can travel without using fossil fuels, only by the heat of the sun. So it's an artist who is very into realistic ideas and working closely with scientists and astronauts, and it's not just having funny ideas, it's more than that. And his show at the Palais de Tokyo was mind-blowing in Paris.
And I have the feeling that you really fell in love with Ugo Rondinone.
Yeah.
Why?
Ugo Rondinone tells a story about time. Many works of him are related to time. And also, we live in a very hectic time, and people are controlled by time. We always look at our watch, and we are always stressed because we get up at morning very early. We have to eat by time-regulated times, and sometimes we eat when we are not hungry, and we become fat, and we become stressed, and we have cardiac problems. And I think people were much more one with nature 200-300 years ago, because there was no industrialization and people worked mostly in agriculture, and so they followed the seasons. And spring they had to work hard to plant all the goods on the lands and to sow the products, and then in summer the days were long, and people had to harvest and to take everything inside to overcome the winter. And then in winter the days were short and people could rest. There was no work on the land, and they followed like a biological clock. And so nature took care for people because they had to work hard in spring and in summer, but they had the time to rest in winter. And that's also the reason that Ugo Rondinone makes those clocks in stained glass, where he takes away the arms of the clock because he wants to confrontate people with their own relation to time. Are we controlled by our watch, and are we always in a hurry, and do we take time for ourselves, and do we care for ourselves? Because a lot of people cannot handle the stress. If we look back 40 years ago, the world was much less stressful. And there was no internet, there was no email. People communicated over the phone or with a letter that you could send, and it took 3 days to receive a letter, and after a week you had an answer because it took a week to send and to have a letter back. So there was less stress. Now people send a mail and immediately they call, have you received my mail? So a lot of people can't cope with that high rhythm that life is imposing on us. And so sometimes Rondinone, he plays on that level that we can control our own life and take decisions that are good for our health. And sometimes we have to say stop in this hectic world and take time for ourselves and think about the way that we stand in our lives.
And the nudes?
The nudes are referring to the 4 elements that he often uses in his work, because he has made nude sculptures that are molded on real dancers, ballet dancers. And he mixes the wax with all types of soil, because he has categorized all things on earth in 4 elements. You have the water element, the fire, the earth, and the air element. And so he says that people belong to the earth element because we live on earth, and after our death we return to the earth as dust or as ashes. And so to emphasize on that, he mixes the wax with all sorts of soil that he finds all over the world. So he has like a brown type of soil, that's the normal agricultural ground. You have like a green type of soil that is more the argile type of soil, and then black soil is more from volcanic areas. And so he mixes those body parts with that different types of soil, and he assemblates them into figures. And the figures, they are sitting and they are having their heads in a way that they cannot connect with you. They have their eyes closed and they are very melancholic. They are into themselves, and we can only imagine what happens in the heads of those people. And it's also a message that he wants to send out to the world, that we have to be respectful, because you see that also the joints of the very different body parts are not perfect, they are not polished, they are not, so that emphasizes on the vulnerability of people, that we have to be careful in our relationships with people and to respect people and to handle them like we ourselves want to be handled. So it's very poetic work that he makes that's very meaningful for our time of world that we live in now.
When we enter the collection, we directly walk through a huge picture with a couple. And the skin is like finger painted.
Yes, it's a work by Amoako Boafo, and he's an African artist. He lives in Accra in Ghana. He also has a studio in Vienna, and you see the influence of Egon Schiele in the work. And he's already painting in Accra, Ghana from 2007. And he was discovered by Kehinde Wiley, and Kehinde Wiley gave a tip to Marianne Ibrahim. She's originally from Chicago, but she has a gallery in Paris and also in Mexico City. And she discovered Amoako Boafo, and he's an artist who paints with his fingers the skin parts of his paintings. And he was a very big success in Art Basel, Miami, where he was shown for the first time. And he had a famous auction record in 2018 in a fair, and it made him a big star. And now he's also part of the Gagosian family gallery. So he's a very respected artist, and he also was asked by Jeff Bezos, the big boss of Amazon, to paint the protection panels of one of his air missiles. And he painted the portrait of himself, his self-portrait, a picture of Otis Kwame, his best friend from his youth, and also a picture of his mother. And he painted those portraits on the protection panels of the missile of the New Shepard, one of the missiles of the Blue Origin space program. And he's very lyric about it, because he says, I'm not only a star, I'm also the only star artist who can say that my work has been among the stars. And so it's a very talented painter, and we're very happy that the work Dinner for Two is here in our entrance hall. Yeah.
Dinner for Two is like your building. It seems like there are 2 buildings having a dinner, art dinner together. Is there a story behind the building?
So we are here in the ancient industrial part of Brussels, where the industry was at the time, and the building consists of two parts. We have a part from 1930 of 2 stories with a curved roof, and then the other part is a 4-story building. We call it the cathedral, and this is a part from 1926. So in between there's a new building where our entrance hall is, and that connects the both old buildings. On the ground floor we have the entrance and also the circulation zone with the elevator and the staircase, and on the upper floors we have like smaller cabinets, but they also connect the 2 ancient buildings. And the restoration was led by Robrecht and Daam. They are famous architects from Ghent, and Paul Robrecht also worked for Jan Hoet at the Documenta in Kassel in 92, where he built the pavilions and the garden in the park. And he's an architect who is very acquainted with art, and he said about his mission that he was only the cleaner of the space. He just did some adjustments, and he built like the collection walls, the lateral walls to hang the artworks on. But he kept the building mostly in the atmosphere that it was. And he says that most of the artworks are created in industrial lofts or lost factories. Many artists have their studios in old industrial spaces, and it's a nice way also to present the work in this format.
You're sitting in front of a work from Gregor Hildebrandt.
Yeah.
What role does music play in your life or in the life of the collection?
Music is, for me, is very important. Musicians are also artists. Every man is an artist. Jeder Mensch ist ein Künstler. I think also musicians are really artists. If you see, sometimes I go to a concert and you see all people that are touched by music. And also music is, for many artists, is also a big inspiration. So why shouldn't it be for a collector? I learned also about music through artists like the Tindersticks. I went to a concert with my son to Tindersticks in Antwerp, and it's such a touching music. It's so melancholic. It's music that I also discovered through the work of Ugo Rondinone. And I think music is also food for the soul, like art is food for the soul. If you see sometimes a band standing on the stage and 60,000 people who are in a sort of trance because they like all the same music and they can sing the songs from start to end by heart. So it's something also magical. But it's true that we named some of our collection presentations through song text, and the first one was a song by Warren Zevon, Disorder in the House. Then we had Sympathy for the Devil and Man in the Mirror. And also my father did one of his exhibitions in the Biennale of Venice, and it was called Heartbreak Hotel, and it was an Elvis Presley song. But it's no focus because now we are presenting the collection in the Schaulager way. It's like a mix between storage and also showing art. And now they are just called collection presentation number 1, collection presentation number 2, and number 3. So it's no fixation on music, but it's true that I personally like a lot of music. Yeah.
And now we are in the year of the snake.
Yeah.
And you have a very special snake here in the presentation room, or how do you call it, the audience room?
Yeah, it's our project space. Since the opening of the collection, we had David Altmate in the space. We had also IS plus F, a film by Philip Pareno. We had Thomas Saraceno in the space, and also Mark Hanford. And now we keep this space mostly free on the ground because sometimes we have also small events in the collection. And also we sometimes invite music and dance performance because there's like a nice integration when people do something about contemporary dance or music in the space, and it brings other people also that not are acquainted with contemporary art to the space. So that's very nice. And we own some works by Ai Weiwei. We have like a circle of bicycles, and we knew the work of the life vest snake that he made, and we asked Ai Weiwei to lend us the work for a year, and he accepted this. And since the Year of the Dragon is the life vest snake present in the collection, and we are happy that it's now the Year of the Snake because now it's a real snake of 22 meters and a half long that is floating on the ceiling of our project space, and it's like a work that is very into the problematic of the refugee in the world. It's composed by 140 life vests that the artist collected on the shores of Lesbos, the Greek island, where people that flee from the north of Africa, mostly Syria and the north of Africa, and they are in search of a new and better life. And the first part of their voyage is trespassing the Mediterranean Sea, and that's the most difficult and dangerous part of their journey. And when they arrive in Lesbos, it's just like arriving in the new world, and it's the start of a new life. And symbolically, they get rid of their life vest and they throw it away on the shores of Lesbos. I'd never imagined that the shores of Lesbos and the beaches of Lesbos were full of life jackets. And you can Google it. There are plenty of life vests on the shores. And when Ai Weiwei visited Lesbos, he was on a boat and he was approaching the island. And from far, it was just like the skin of a snake that lost his skin on the beach and gave him the inspiration to build a gigantic snake that is composed of those life vests. And that's for him like a critic on the problematic of the refugee problem in the world and how people and politics cope with it. So it's a very meaningful work.
There was also a snake in his work, I think, bags of pupils?
Yes, sometimes he uses the animals of the zodiac in his work, and it has not always the same meaning because he had made a snake with school bags of children who died in an earthquake, and that's more like a comment on the fact that there's a lot of corruption in the Chinese building sector where they put not enough steel in the concrete and the schools were not safe against earthquakes. And there was a certain time an important earthquake in China and some schools collapsed and many children were dead after the earthquake. And then he recuperated the school bags of those children and also assembled them into a giant snake. And it's like also a comment of Ai Weiwei. He's a very committed artist who makes a lot of critics on different types of problems that are in this world. And so it's a critic on the corruption in the Chinese building world.
Is it quite common that you meet artists from your collection?
For us, it's not the most important thing that we meet or that we have to meet or to know an artist before we buy an artwork. I think buying art is like I told you before, it's falling in love with the work, and who the artist is less important than the quality of the work. But at a certain moment, like with Ugo Rondinone, like with Thomas Saraceno, with different other artists, when you buy works and you show them in your exhibition, at a certain moment you are invited to attend an opening of an artist in a gallery. At a certain moment you meet them, and it can be very good, and you have nice conversations. I had very nice conversations with artists, and I like to learn also directly from the artist himself. What is the message? What do you mean with the artwork? And if you hear it from first hand, it's always better. And I always say to people, if you want to know what art is, what's the meaning of art, before you had to read very difficult books written by art critics, and you took the time to read an entire page, and if you read the page you didn't understand what was written. And so sometimes you're very frustrated when you read art books and articles that are written by art critics because they use difficult words and they do some very difficult explanations. But if you look up artists on YouTube or on the internet and you play videos, then you have plenty of nice interviews of artists explaining their work, or like podcasts that you make or other people make. There are plenty of podcasts or artist talks where artists explain their work, and you hear it from first hand, you hear it from the artist himself. And I'd already told, for me, the story behind the art and what art wants to tell the world is the most important.
I love anecdotes.
Yeah.
Do you have a nice little memory, maybe the first meeting with an artist?
When we went for the first time to New York, we had a meeting with Jeffrey Deitch. He's one of the most important art dealers, and he was like the man who discovered young artists, and he was like the first dealer of Jeff Koons at the time. And we had the pleasure to visit the studio of Jeff Koons at that time. And there was just a time where they were painting the celebration paintings, and there was a huge maquette of the balloon dog standing in the middle of the studio. So for me, that was very impressive to be in the studio of Jeff Koons and to see all those people painting. And Jeff Koons was going from one painter to the other, adjusting and giving instructions, and then saying hello and showing around the studio. So
you have also some objects from Jeff Koons, the donkey mirror.
Yeah, we have a donkey mirror, yes, and we have also his marble self-portrait of Jeff Koons. That's from the Made in Heaven series. Yeah.
Another artist here in your collection is Bruce Nauman.
Yes.
And Paul McCarthy.
Yes. Paul McCarthy is, I think, from the same age of my father. They get 80 years old in this year. And it's an artist that always has interested us. My father has bought a lot of work by him from his Pirate series. And we met him also a few times. And he's a very friendly man. And well, we like his work because he makes also like a criticism on the hypocrisy of some people. We always act that we live in a great world where everything is peaceful, but there are also very cruel things happening in this world. And Paul McCarthy puts his finger right in the middle of the wound, and he wants to show us
some salt on it.
Some salt on it. That's not always appreciated by people because they don't understand, and they find his work very violent and very disruptive and very confusing, and it's very hard. But if you know the deeper sense of the work, then you can understand that he makes that sort of work. And it's the same with Bruce Nauman. I'm very fascinated. If people ask me what's your all-time favorite artist, I always say Bruce Nauman, because Bruce Nauman is that type of artist who is always genius in everything that he does. He can control every medium, and if he creates an artwork, he always has the gift to pick the right medium to make the work. And sometimes it's a video work, sometimes it's only a sound piece, sometimes it's a sculpture, sometimes it's a neon. And he expresses himself always in a very distinct way. And also what's very good, what I find very good of Bruce Nauman, that he has his own time schedule. He cannot be forced by gallerists to force him to produce every year new work. Sometimes Bruce Nauman takes 5 years to come back to the artwork with new work. And he's very controlling his own production when he works and when he doesn't work. So it's a living legend in the art world. And we have a work here by Tracey Emin, who is an important artist of the young British artists. And they were all young in the 80s, but now they are all 40 years older. We have work by Kennedy Yanko, an American artist who works with steel and combines it with the soft skin material. It's very poetic. We have work by Gillian Waring, but we never bought artists because we wanted to buy female artists. Sometimes people come here and they ask them how many Belgians are in the collection. We are never told that we are a collector of Belgian art. We are also not collector of male artists or of black artists. No, we buy the things that we like, and who made it is not so important. I told you also when we walked around, when I was a little child, and also my sister, we get a mission before we enter the gallery. And my father said, if you come out of the gallery, I want you to tell me what was the best work that we saw in the exhibition. Because he's convinced that in every exhibition, and that's true, there are normal works, but there are 1 or 2 masterworks. And we were trained to recognize the best quality works that were the best works in the exhibition. And sometimes we came out and we had the same results.
You and your sister?
No, me, my father, my sister, sometimes we agreed that this was the best work. And I have a very good visual memory. So because I remember, for instance, all the Richters that I saw before, and I can, if I'm in front of a Richter, I can tell that's a good one or that's a middle one, because that you can easily compare one with all the other things that you saw before. Because a lot of people buy art by name. Because when I told you a name, Damien Hirst, for example, Damien Hirst is a big star. He's one of the biggest artists living on the world. He's one of my favorite artists as well. But sometimes people they want to buy Damien Hirst, but they are not interested in what they buy from Damien Hirst. But Damien Hirst has made series that are less important than other series. So if you have to learn about the artist and look what is important, what is the best period. It's the same with Herr Basel. He's still producing work, but his work that he made in the 80s was so mind-blowing with the Orangen Esser. I see the Orangen Essers in the exhibitions in the 80s. It was fabulous. When I would like to buy a Baselitz, I would certainly buy one from the 80s. And I think what you see is what you get. We give a presentation of the collection, and we always think about what have we shown in the past, so that people, if they come here, they see new things, because mainly we have a public that is visiting us year after year and wants to see new things. If you come to a museum and you see every time the same things, I like a museum like this. Is the Dia Foundation in Beacon in New York. That's the most fantastic assembly of contemporary art, and they never changed the hanging and the presentation of the works, but you go there to see the masterpieces of all the minimal artists, of Dan Flavin, of Donald Judd, of Bruce Nauman, Blinky Palermo, Andy Warhol. It's the most fantastic resemblance of contemporary art, and it's just 2 hours train from New York uptown along the Hudson. For me, it's the most fantastic museum. But here we have a family collection, and we show our collection in a very specific way. And sometimes we are not so thinking in categories. That's not our type of work.
Isn't the collection open every week or every month?
No. When my father wanted to have a collection, because one of the reasons is that we often buy artworks that are much too big for our own houses, because they are too high or too big, or they take too many place. It was always a dream to have a building where we could experience our own collection. And when we were transforming this space, it was not directly the idea to open up for the public. It was only after some people and friends came to the collection that they said, it's a pity that you don't open up for the public. And at a certain moment, in the beginning of the collection, my parents opened up every weekend. But as you know, Brussels is not like Paris or not like London or not like New York. There you have plenty of galleries and plenty of museums, and people come especially to that cities to travel and to see art and to experience art. And you can easily go 3 days visiting art galleries and see no other things in New York. When we go to New York, it's all day visiting galleries, museums, one after the other. But here they opened up, and sometimes they were here and they had 4 or 5 visitors on a Saturday and on a Sunday, and then you are the slave of your collection. And at a certain moment, my father had no energy anymore to open up any weekend, because he could not see any artworks anymore. He could not go to galleries or to museums because he was all the time here. And then he's always drastic in his actions. He said, I will close. We will not open up anymore. But as children, my sister and myself, we said, no, we won't do that. We will open up once a month, and we will concentrate all visitors on one Saturday in the month. And we will pick those Saturdays out in the calendar and see that they are picked out when there is no fair. We will not be open when there is Art Basel. We are only open when it's Art Brussels, because that's when Art Brussels is in town. But that we can go to Fries in London, that we can go to Miami if we want to. And then we have programmed one Saturday in a week. And doing this, we have sometimes you have 200 visitors on a Saturday, and that's very nice also for the guides, that they have a big group that they can walk around in the museum.
So do you have a team of curators, guides?
We have no curators, and we have a very small team. As I told you, we have our father, who was the founding father of the collection.
The
founding father. And then my sister and myself, we have fixed dates in the week. That I'm here every Tuesday, my sister every Thursday, and then we come on different moments for different occasions when there's something to do in the museum. And then we have one collaborator who works half-time. And it's a very small team with 4 persons. The collection is led, and we have no external advisors or curators who tell us what to buy. We buy the things that we like ourselves, and We do it with our hearts. And I always tell people, because a lot of friends ask me sometimes, what should I buy? I have a budget and I have a house and I have no art and you are the expert. And I always tell people, if you buy a work of art, the most important thing is that you like it. And also the amount of money that you spend on it, that it's okay for you. And when they tell you tomorrow that it's worth nothing anymore, and you still like it, then you have bought something that is good for you. But if you buy art and you pay too much money and afterwards it's worth nothing, then you are only frustrated. And you have to say, if it's worth nothing tomorrow, I still like it, and you have made the right decision.
Art Brussels is the institution who brings us together. Do you have a special moment on Art Brussels? What do you combine with Art Brussels?
I tell you a little secret, because Art Brussels was very important for us when we chose a location for our collection, because we visited a lot of cities where a lot of artists are present and galleries are present. And I think in the first place in Paris, in New York, and London, a lot of galleries, a lot of museums, a lot of artists living. And my mother didn't want to go abroad. My father wanted to bring the collection, perhaps even in New York. He was dreaming of having a museum in New York. But my mother would miss her children and her grandchildren, so that was not a good plan. And as a location, we chose Brussels because it's, for one reason, the most cosmopolitan city in Belgium. I have a lot of cultures, and also it's on the crossroads in Europe. It's in the center of Europe. You can easily travel. You have the airport, you have all the railway stations, and you can easily come to Brussels by train. But also the fact that Brussels was the only city in Belgium with a contemporary art fair and an international art fair, because Art Brussels is the only fair, international art fair in Belgium. Also, that was very, for us, deciding to bring the collection to Brussels. And all the time we had a nice collaboration with Art Brussels. We opened up for the VIP program, and we let the visitors visiting the collection the day before the opening of the fair, and also the Saturday when the fair is open. On the opening day, that has no sense because everyone is then on the fair. But we have a nice collaboration, and it lasts already many, many years. And we like to go also to the fair ourselves on Thursday and visit the fair. And there you meet fellow collectors, artists, gallerists, and you have nice conversations. It's a meeting point to connect, to talk about art, to talk about the shared passion. And I have a friend who always says, magic happens when you share the passion. And that's life about sharing your passion, telling people about your passion. And I enjoy giving tours here in the museum myself, because when I'm here to open up, I can, at the meantime, even do something that is useful and tell people about the collection. And it's a pity that I can tell it to everybody, because we have very good trained guides here in the museum. But I'm always glad that I can take a group for myself and show them around in the collection. And it's also passing the energy and the passion of the family to the visitors, and that's very important. And also, and Art Brussels is a very quality fair. It's not the biggest fair, but it has a place, because Belgians have the tradition to be one of the most important collectors in the world. Belgian collectors are very important. Even in the past until now, there are very important Belgian collections. And I think for gallerists who come from abroad, it's also interesting to connect with the Belgian collectors. Some of international gallerists have locations here in Brussels, and because they want to be close by their market. And it's also good to discover new things on the fair. I like going to an art fair because at a certain moment they mostly do a presentation of their program with different works from different artists, and at a certain moment they bring also new people to the fair and new artists that they present and they talk about. So sometimes it's a first encounter with a new artist, and that happened to me in Art Basel with Anne Imhoff, happened to me with Saraceno. Perhaps it will happen again, but you can never predict it. It's never a plan. We have no plan behind this collection. There is no crystal ball where we can predict the future. We have no external advisors. We only look what's coming to us, what is sent to us, what we see in museum, what we see in other private collections, what is the passion from other people. And sometimes you pick something up and then you get inspired and you also decide to buy an artist. But As I told you, we have no budget that has to be spent every year. Sometimes, some years we buy nothing, and in other years we buy 3 or 5 or 4 artists. It happens when it happens.
When the passion is there.
Yeah.
How does Art Brussels stand out compared to other international art fairs?
Well, Art Brussels is a small fair, and it's very easy to visit in one day. If you go to Art Basel, it's a very big fair, and it takes a lot of time, and you're very tired after visiting because there's a lot to see, and there are 2 floors. And despite of the small size, I think there's a very high quality in Art Brussels. And the fair is very well organized. The corridors and the stands are very spacious, and they guarantee also an optimal art experience. And as I told you, Belgian collectors are known worldwide, and also many foreign galleries try to reach those Belgian collectors through Art Brussels. And Brussels is like a smaller version of Paris, and it has also much to offer to the visitors. And that's why I'm convinced that Art Brussels certainly deserves its place in a very large selection of international fairs.
Do you have a special, extraordinary recommendation for our listeners when we come and visit Art Brussels?
Oh, that's difficult. When I come to Brussels, it's mostly for work.
Okay, not your office.
No. And here you cannot eat in the collection, but there are plenty of restaurants. We are here in the nice neighborhood of the Dansart neighborhood, and you have plenty of restaurants here. But if you want to eat something typical Belgian, there is a nice restaurant that's called La Belle Maraîchère, and it's on the Green Market, the Nieuwe Graanmarkt. And it's a typical Belgian restaurant where you can eat the croquettes with crevettes and very good cooked fresh fish. And it's a very nice restaurant with an old interior. It's a very nice place to go, and it's very nearby.
The podcast, Die Leichtigkeit der Kunst. We could say something like the lightness of art. What does it mean for you?
Oh, art is not always light.
No, not really.
But I'm fond of light art and art that has light in it, because I have a lot of in my personal collection, because I told you I have a Vanhaerents Art Collection, and we buy with 3 people, and sometimes we don't agree on buying the same things. For instance, when I bought Thomas Saraceno for the first time, my father and my sister weren't fan of the work, so that's no problem. My father said, buy it for your own collection, and I did. But sometimes my sister is more into minimal art. She likes more abstract artworks. But I like also the minimal artists like the Donald Judd and Dan Flavin and Ellsworth Kelly. But that's another generation. I wasn't even born when they were at the top of their careers. And perhaps when I was young at the time, I would bought all the works of those artists because I like them very much, but that's another period, and I can enjoy tremendously when I walk in a museum and I see Dan Flavin and Donald Judd and Ellsworth Kelly. They are the big stars of the minimalism, and I like the work very much. But we are convinced we buy contemporary art, we buy the art of today, and the artists of our generation who speak the same language, who experience the same things that happen in the world, and sometimes it's not so good. If you see what's happening now in the United States with a president who is uncontrollable, if you see all the wars in the world, in Israel, in Ukraine, it's a crazy world. You have financial instability, you have the stress with many people, and some artists, they make very confronting work. It's not always light, the message, but personally, I prefer artists who work with light, like Olafur Eliasson, Jeppe Hein. It's the happy side of art. It makes people happy and makes us think about the way that we are in our lives and how we are living our lives. But it can also be confronting. It doesn't have to be like Paul McCarthy is not so Leichtigkeit. There's not much Leichtigkeit in the work, but it's holding a mirror in front of you and how you respond to those type of things. You can be afraid of the wars and you can be afraid of the situation, but I think you always have to look to the good side of things. And I will tell something stupid, but I'm a big Star Wars fan. And I'm
never thought that.
I'm a big Star Wars fan, and always the light is the good side, or the force will always survive. Even when the spark is so little, it becomes a new fire, and that's all about passion. It's the force will always win from the dark side.
I really feel that you fell in love with art and the emotion you show and you talk about. I'm so happy to talk to you and get connected with you. Thanks a lot for your time, for showing me your collection.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Das war's für heute. Die nächste Folge erscheint in einer Woche. Und um sie nicht zu verpassen, folge der Die Leichtigkeit der Kunst gerne auf deiner Podcast-App. Wenn dir diese Folge gefallen hat und dir auch die weiteren Episoden zusagen, dann hinterlass doch gerne 5 Sternchen sowie eine wohlgesonnene Bewertung. Ich freue mich auch über Empfehlungen, Fragen, Kritik und natürlich auch weitere Themenvorschläge oder GesprächspartnerInnen. Dazu kannst du gerne die Social-Media-Kanäle von Die Leichtigkeit der Kunst nutzen oder eine E-Mail an folgende Adresse schreiben: info@dieleichtigkeitderkunst.de. Danke fürs Zuhören und tschüss, bis zum nächsten Mal. Deine Claudia.